when we say treaty. It can be something as simple as place names and sharing of national parks, or something as complicated as tax law. So there has to be a body to negotiate a treaty with. And that's why the voice is so important. With the federal government, it's obviously about issues to do with the issues that federal government deals with. They're really big things like tax and money and land and, social security and a whole range of things. In terms of treaty and agreement making, it seems to me that with the establishment of voice, that is a vehicle to negotiate a national treaty with. There isn't one at the moment. And a treaty is a settlement, and it can be about many things.
A recently resurfaced video of Linda Burney, the Indigenous Affairs Minister, confirms what we all knew or suspected all along. The voice is about treaty and financial payments. The voice is the mechanism through which the government could be forced to the negotiating table over a treaty. It is also the entity with which the government might negotiate a treaty, and that treaty could easily involve financial payments. Linda Burney made these comments back in 2020. Since 2020, the government has clearly realised that a treaty is unpalatable and has done its best to cover this up with a thin veneer of platitudes and aphorisms. It's no wonder that Anthony Albanese becomes so angry whenever he is confronted with the voice treaty connection, as we saw in his interview with Ben Fordham.
But I don't misquote people
Sure.
like Megan Davis or Thomas Mayo. Thomas Mayo says the voice will help to tear down institutions, pressure governments to pay the rent, pay reparations and compensation, and punish politicians who fail to deliver. So I'm keen to know, what does pay the rent mean?
Well, I disagree with that. But
Are there going to be reparations?
No, Ben. I'll make this point.
Wouldn't it
Hang
stand
on,
to reason? No, I'm on a flow
Well,
here.
when
I
you
wanna
finish...
You've just accused me of reading from a pamphlet. I wasn't reading
No,
from.
I didn't.
So
I said those quotes are from the No pamphlet, which they are.
All right, I'll listen
Which
back to
they
that.
are.
But anyway, let me just focus on the important thing. Surely, as part of the Uluru Statement, we have a voice, we have treaty, we have truth-telling. As part of a treaty, won't there be compensation? If there is, I mean, that's not totally unexpected.
This isn't about a treaty, Ben.
But there are three parts of the Uluru Statement.
Yeah, and this is
So
not...
you're talking about the
This is not
voice.
about a treaty.
But as part of treaty, which we
This
guess will
is-
be a following step,
This is not about a
do
treaty.
you foresee that compensation would be
This
paid?
is not about a treaty.
It is very clear that the voice could force a treaty and financial payments to occur. This is despite what Anthony Albanese has said, and is clear from what Linda Burney has said. This is for several key reasons, and they all relate to the voice's clear level of real power. First, the voice is the only constitutionally enshrined body with the right to make representations. Representations and information are not per se bad. Getting more information is generally a good thing. However, there is a big problem, and the problem is that the voice is the only body that would have the constitutionally enshrined right to make those representations, which gives it significantly more implicit power than any other body. Further, after giving the voice the right to make these representations, it enables it to litigate if it alleges the government ignored it, even if the government did not do so. This could give rise to vexatious litigation in order to force the government to the negotiating table. This is something that Thomas Mayo has seemingly flagged in the past.
This is the first step. It's a vital step, and it puts all the explanation behind it. Pay the rent, for example. How do we do that in a way that is transparent and that it actually sees reparations and compensation to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people?
The power in the voice, campaign for that, and punish politicians that ignore our advice. That is where the power comes from.
Second, the voice would have the right to be consulted on various matters. The exact width of this right remains to be seen. However, it would have the right to be consulted, because the right to make representations connotes a right to be consulted. It connotes a practical ability to make those representations, which would imply consultation. No other body would have that constitutionally enshrined right. This would therefore give more rights to the voice than any other entity. Therefore, the government would only be bound to consider and consult the voice, and is not bound to consult on countervailing views. This could clearly give rise to biased one-sided information. This enables the voice to control the narrative, which gives it power. It could also, like I've indicated before, litigate to stop a particular action if it feels it were not consulted sufficiently, again enabling it to engage in some vexatious litigation if the government didn't come to the negotiating table. The result of these matters is that the voice could potentially force the government to negotiate on a treaty and/or could feed clearly biased pro-treaty information to the government via its representations. Furthermore, the voice might actually expand the government's powers to legislate in a way that might resemble a treaty, and this is by virtue of the government being able to legislate with respect to the voice under section 129.3 of the amendment text. This section implies that because the Parliament can legislate with respect to the voice, it might also be able to legislate with respect to its representations. This may enable the government to legislate further than it already could, potentially into areas of additional funding and similar things. This therefore could enable a de facto treaty via financial payments, even if a treaty per se does not occur. We get the treaty in all but name. However, of course, that power would need to be litigated in the courts, and the exact ambit of it, well, that would remain to be seen. Whatever the case might be, it is very clear from Linda Burney's comments that there is a goal to bring about a treaty. There is a goal to bring about this so-called Makarrata. There is a goal, therefore, to bring about financial payments. This is clear from Linda Burney's comments and is also clear from the government's own funding, where the government has earmarked, as I've indicated before, $6 million for the formation of a Makarrata Commission, i.e. a treaty commission. The government has reportedly already spent about $1 million on this. The government is already laying the groundwork for a treaty. The government seemingly thought the voice would get off the ground and was therefore planning for a treaty on the assumption that the voice ultimately existed. However, of course, what happens to that money remains to be seen if and when the voice ultimately fails. Will the government go ahead and try to bring about a treaty even without the voice? Or will the government actually listen to voters and not pursue this? Again, we don't really know. We're really just speculating about what the government might do if and when the voice ultimately doesn't get off the ground. In any case, it is very clear that the voice would have increased the probability of a treaty. Now, one thing I do want to note is a treaty could in theory exist even if the voice didn't exist. The government could legislate for something resembling a treaty even without the voice. The main point here is that the voice increases the probability of a treaty. Not that a treaty is impossible without the voice, but that the voice makes the treaty more likely. Furthermore, if there were to be such a treaty, the voice would increase the probability that the treaty is more far-reaching and involves greater financial payments. So the voice therefore would increase the likelihood and the risk of a treaty and the likelihood and the risk of far-reaching financial payments. That's the underlying concern, and it is very clear from Linda Burney's comments that is quite a risk. Now to me, it looks like the government has been trying to pull the wool over our eyes. Anthony Albanese, by pretending that treaty is not in the ballot paper, seems to be misleading the voters, at least to my mind, although I would be interested to hear your thoughts about whether he is misleading people as well. But do make up your own mind about whether you think treaty is on the ballot paper. Whichever way you vote, do remember to vote, because if you don't vote, you can't complain about the outcome.